I believe this battle that we are fighting is a spiritual one. I think now at this point in humanity, where we're at now with the spiritual awakening, we need to pick a side and we need to direct where humanity is going to go. Pick a side, because now it's too late. And this is a massive spiritual awakening not on a country level, but on a global scale. And it's happening, and we're in it right now. And I think that with this quarantine and everyone being under this massive lockdown or whatever, I think now is the time where these light bulbs are just going on, you know, turning on to every human being out there. And they're starting to pay more attention to like shows like this. Now people are paying attention to something much bigger and much greater. And this is the Great Awakening. This is why it's called the Great Awakening, because people are now paying attention.
Hey everyone, welcome to Edge of Wonder. It's Ben and Rob here with David Rodriguez, who we're so happy to have on our show. And if you don't know who he is, if you've been living under a rock maybe the last couple weeks, David Nino Rodriguez was an American heavyweight boxer. He was formerly ranked number 13 in the world by the WBC and number 12 by the WBA, while 11th in the world by the IBA. He has an impressive record of 34 KOs, with 24 of them being in the first round, a number that rivaled Mike Tyson of his legendary first round record. So in 2011, he survived a brutal knife attack, the result of which was a near-death experience and a facial scar that runs clear from his ear to his chin. This experience changed his life forever, and this is part of the story we'll get into with David. Also, David, you just published a book called When the Lights Go Out, and I heard that you typed this all on your iPhone.
I think with one hand, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had tendonitis in my thumb. It was like, I did that, you know, I was sitting up in the hospital with a back surgery, and I knew I was never going to box again. And I said I had so much frustration, anxiety, and just I had to like just put it all out there. I had to get it all out of me. It was like cathartic. It was therapeutic. I had to just release it all. And the only way I knew how to do that was to write the book. And it was better than seeing a doctor or a psychiatrist, which I probably should have seen, but with all the experiences that I went through. But for me, it was so therapeutic to just write the book and just put all my life out there. I didn't expect to publish it, and I did. After my mom and my sister read it, and they were like, "Man, you got to put this out there. It's really good." I was like, I don't know. It's pretty personal because it's mainly for me. And so I put it out there, and it's doing really well.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations. It's not at all easy to go through that process of getting a book out there at all. And I mean, I think I speak for everyone when I say we're just glad that you're healed up now and, you know, you're back out there doing what you do.
You know, I'll be honest with you, like 2011 was such a crazy year for me because that was the year that I flatlined. I won my first championship, and I went out or it was actually my fifth championship in 2011. And I went out and partied, and I overdosed on drugs. I thought I was like Superman. I thought I could just do whatever. And I was that cocky, arrogant fighter. And I took a handful of pain pills. I took Adderall. I was drinking a bunch of alcohol. And then I took GHB. And I took a whole flask of it, and that was it. That was all she wrote. I flatlined. I was gone. I collapsed in the club first and foremost, and they pulled me out into the alley, and because they didn't want me dying in the club. And a girl saved my life. She went and got my friends and said, "This is on you. If he dies, it's on you guys. He's dying. He's convulsing. I was going into cardiac arrest." Put me in the ambulance, or they put me in the truck, drove me to the hospital. They came out, gave me CPR, and they saved my life. And I was in the hospital. I was in ICU for 8 days, and that was in the beginning of 2011. Then I come back and I win another championship belt, and I'm walking out of a bar 2 nights later celebrating another championship. And see, I used to juggle extremes. I was a bad alcoholic, and I was also a pro athlete. So I was juggling these 2 extremes that were just so crazy. You know, I was living this crazy, crazy life, an emotional roller coaster. And I was leaving the club, and some thugs came up behind me, and they slit my throat from my ear all the way to my chin, and all of this came off. A good friend of mine named Jess Trader saved my life. He came running up, and he saw the commotion. He comes running up, and I just saw him go like this, and then they started stabbing him as well. So it was really 2011 was probably the most eventful year of my life, and it was the craziest year of my life. And it changed and defined me forever. Changed the whole direction my life was going, which was to the heavyweight champions of the world, a promising career. I was 36-0, and then all of a sudden, boom! It just blew up. I went from like hero to zero. I went and fought right afterwards. Got knocked out on national television. I wasn't healed mentally or physically, and it changed the whole direction of my life. And now I'm a completely different person than whoever that guy was back in 2011.
You had a near-death experience through this, right? Like,
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit of that? And also, I mean, how does it feel from going to being on the boxing stage to now kind of being on the truther stage as well, and that kind of thing too?
Well, I've always told people boxing is the most honest sport there is. You expose yourself out there in the open. So like right now, people are like, man, aren't you scared? And you're putting yourself out there, this and that. And boxing, you're out there, you're exposed. You're half naked in a ring fighting another guy to the death, basically, to whoever knocks each other out. So it's an honest sport. The thing is that I think with the whole thing that's going on with this truther movement, I became very spiritual after I retired. Like I had to dig deep and really search inside to see what really mattered to David Rodriguez. I lost my whole identity. I didn't know who I was anymore after I got stabbed in the throat and then lost my fight. The guy that was 36-0 had the whole world by the balls, and then here I am, nobody. I had to really reinvent, and the transition of that period of time from about 2011 to now was not until about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago maybe, was very dark. And I tell everybody, to change as a person, you have to go through a cocoon of change. And it's hard. It's a struggle. It's a hard transition. It's a very hard period. Any kind of growth is going to be hard. And for me to come out on the other side and quit alcohol and quit the drugs and quit all the extreme shit that I did, I had to really go through a lot of transformation. And that took a lot of willpower. It took a whole stripping of my ego and my self-identity. I didn't even know who I was anymore for 5 years. I didn't have the entourage around me. I didn't have the trainers. I wasn't the boxer Dave anymore. People stopped calling me champ. It was so humbling, so humiliating. And now I can finally say I'm enjoying life again at a different level, and it's more rewarding. And the fact that I'm going on shows with you guys like this is what it's all about. I'd rather be making a change in people's lives than just being the boxer in the ring, knocking somebody out or getting knocked out. You know, it's just, it was so egotistical, and it was self-glorified. And now I'm living for other people. At least I'm trying to, you know, so that's where I'm at now.
Dude, that is an amazing story. Actually, you know, Ben and I both separately watched the Laura Eisenhower interview. And for those of you at home who haven't seen that, you should definitely go check that out. And I think for a lot of people at home, they're probably wondering, you know, you being in the position that you were in and having experienced everything that you've experienced, especially being at like the height of the sports or the boxing industry at the very least. What compelled you to make the video that you put out there, basically sharing what you understood about Hollywood and the rings that are getting cleared up and stuff like that?
And I just want to say one thing, and I know a lot of you are doubting this, but this is the truth, man. There is a big sting operation going down. It's happening, and I'm telling you, man, these pedophile rings are getting taken down. It's Hollywood ain't cool anymore. Hollywood's going down, and I still talk to my sources, and I still talk to people that are involved. And listen, there is a big operation going down, and they're getting taken out. And every day is confirmation to me when it's a secretive thing, but I think it's going to come out. They say it's going to come out on the media when it's all said and done. And I think what's going to happen is going to really shock a lot of you. I mean, a lot of you are going to kind of brush it off and be like, well, I always knew it was there, but I don't think you understand how prevalent these pedophile rings really are in Hollywood and in the sports arenas, in Hollywood, in the political arena. I mean, everywhere, man. It's bad. And it's human trafficking, you know, and sex trafficking is the hottest thing, the biggest commodity right now. And I think once this all comes out to the surface, a lot of you are going to be disgusted and feel very dirty for even knowing the information. I got to tell you, a lot of you don't like Trump, but he's doing the right thing right now. This guy is spearheading this whole thing, and it's an amazing thing to watch.
Well, first of all, you got to remember, not all of Hollywood. I didn't say all of Hollywood. Okay, so it's certain sectors of it and people involved in Hollywood, the elites. You know what I mean? That certain parts of the elites are what I was referring to. But what made me put out that video was, I guess, honestly, I've been 130 days sober now, somewhere around there. And I was never thinking very clear. You know, when I was drinking and binge drinking and going out with friends, I would have never thought of this junk. I always knew it. I always just filed it back. But, you know, you're so busy distracting yourself and going out for drinks and divulging in all this alcohol and chasing women and doing this, that you distract yourself. It's a distraction. So this was the first time, especially during this quarantine, where I've been clean and sober, to where I wanted to speak what was on my mind. And I had a clear mind, a clear head, actually, finally, to where I could actually express what was on my heart and not hide away from it. And I always tell everybody, you know what, for the first 30 days quitting alcohol, you're on this high. Then after 40, 50 days, you kind of hit a plateau. And then 90 days, you get this like Jedi mind. You start thinking very clearly and your intuitive senses go up. And when I went outside on my patio and having a cup of coffee and I made that video, it was not intentional. I did not know I was going to do it. I did not know that that video was going to go viral. None of that. This was a complete accident. I was just venting and speaking out with a clear mind on my Facebook Live to just a few friends that was on there. And that shit went viral. And I mean, my life changed for like 2.5 weeks. It's just been crazy. And I was just expressing what was on my heart. And I felt like I was dealing with like a different source. Like I just was just speaking. It was coming out. It was flowing, you know, and people are saying, are you scared? Are you this or that? I'm not scared because I'm brave, but I'm not stupid. And I made sure that I didn't name anybody. I didn't even name my source. People can kind of guess who it is, but I didn't name sources or anybody. So, I mean, I thought what I said was common sense and logical to most people. I don't understand how it's shocking everybody.
I think the main thing is it's kind of shocking that you know, we're hearing it from people like us, like citizen journalists, people like doing researchers, and a little bit from the inside. But I think someone from your status now coming out is just kind of confirming everything that all of us have been researching for years and trying to expose for a long time. And, you know, as we, like Rob and I are both very keen that nothing happens out of pure coincidence. You know, there's a divine order to everything. And I think that your video, you know, God wanted this video out. You know, I think you put your heart into it, even though you were just talking. And I believe this is why, you know, so many people saw it, is because they were led to watch this video to really say, hey, you know, this is really happening.
Yeah. And David, I think also that, you know, in this community that we're in, the truther community, and even the patriot community, the disclosure community, whatever you want to call it, there's massive amounts of people waking up right now. And your video actually just hit at this perfect point, because people are waiting to get behind more and more people, especially in Hollywood or that have that experience, to come out basically and say these things. And when someone does come out, everyone wants to get behind and support them, just because of how important this issue is. I mean, we're not just talking about a normal issue here. We're talking about our children, you know, and anyone brave enough to come out. It's just so important, man.
You know, to me, there's nothing more important, and people need to understand that these children are being trafficked as currency. There's many ways you can, it's very disturbing to speak about, but, you know, and it'll shake someone's soul once they know that's really what's going on here. And plus, when I made that video, it was like perfectly timed somehow. I didn't think about it, but it came out at the same time as Out of Shadows with Mike Smith. And it was like the 1-2 punch, my video and then his documentary, like a 1-2 punch. And then I think people saw my video, they watched Out of Shadows, they collaborated together beautifully. So I think that was very impactful. And a third punch is coming, and it's called The Sound of Freedom, about Tim Ballard, and Jim Caviezel is playing the role about the Tim Ballard, a true story about Tim Ballard who goes in and breaks up pedophilia rings and goes into the underground tunneling, into these demonic places and saves children. So that's coming, The Sound of Freedom, and that's with Jim Caviezel. What people need to understand is there's a black undercurrent of demonic activity happening within certain elite groups and Hollywood circles where they worship this shit, and they have no conscience. They're completely egomaniacs. They're self-serving, and they think about only themselves in the sense that how can I further my career or whatever that they're trying to do, and they'll do anything to stay young and vibrant. And you know, these children are used as a currency. So what I mean by that is there's this underground current of illegal activity happening with, you know, cartels involved and certain rich elite people that buy these children, and usually they're smuggled out of the third world countries because they don't have a birth certificate and they're easily disposed. So a lot of these kids that are coming from Mexico or South America have no birth certificate. They're easily killed. The elites buy them, they have sex with them, they kill them, no problem, they're gone. Now, specific elites, I've heard of some here and there, but I'm not going to name that because, like I said, I'm brave, but I'm not stupid. I'm not going to put myself out there in a sense where I can get killed. I have sources, legitimate sources that know this is going on. In fact, a lot of people know this is going on. I think what surprised everybody was the fact that I was speaking on adrenochrome and the sacrificing of children. But yes, that does happen. There are sick people out there that do use them for that. And it's a very disturbing thought. It'll shake your soul. It's hard to digest. But since we are now in this spiritual awakening and people are waking up, the light has been shined on it, and it's here. And you can't avoid it or dismiss it anymore. We're going to have to face it because you got to know the dark in order to experience the light. You have to know both. And that's where we're at as a species, and that's where we're at in this great awakening, and it's happening now.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, just out of curiosity, how did you, I want to get back to, I want to talk about Jim Caviezel as well, but I want to go back to the adrenochrome aspect. How did you find out that I mean, aside from like your sources, but how did you come to the conclusion, yes, this is happening, you know, because in this community, this is stuff, the adrenochrome, the sacrifice, this is stuff that's really a lot of us been trying to get people to understand this is going on. But, you know, this is one of the biggest so-called conspiracy theories. You know, we like to think of more of it like conspiracy realist. But how did you come to the conclusion that this is real?
You got to remember that there's a lot of sick people out there, and they're psychopaths. So they're not even, you know, people like to think that everyone has the same belief system as them. That's not true. It's far from it. There are people out there that, you know, are very rich and they feel entitled to everything, and that means everything. There are people that certain bloodlines that run the world. I don't think that's conspiracy anymore. I'm sure a lot of people pretty much are on board with that. There's a hierarchy, right? And they look at us like useless grazers. You know, they look at us like commodities. And we mean nothing to them. They're self-serving, and they are completely not sociopaths, but psychopaths. And they can care less about the advancement of humanity or where we go. I've been around certain circles in Hollywood and places like that in the boxing world. I was always going from LA to Las Vegas. I was hanging out with certain people there, rubbing shoulders with certain people over here. And I would hear about these weird parties, and you know, I was asked to attend some parties by some directors at Sundance Festival, and I've had people come up to me and go, dude, you don't want to do that. That dude's dark. Like, I'm talking, it's almost like they test you out. Like they see if you'll be willing to join this party and go to it, and then they test your limits, and then, okay, if he does that, then I'll go to the next one, or he'll go to the next one. They test you out, and it's never, hey, you want to come over to my house and drink some adrenochrome and hang out with some kids? It's not like that. You know what I mean? It's not like that. No way is it like that. It's secretive and it's steps. So without giving too much, like I said, it makes me very uneasy and uncomfortable to speak about this stuff because number one, it's a disturbing subject. Number two, I just, I don't want to put myself in harm's way, you know?
No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So David, I think, there's so many things that I want to ask you. And I think you kind of just answered a little bit some of the things that were on my mind about kind of what it was like for you rubbing shoulders with everyone in Hollywood. And it would seem like there's this perception, I think, that researchers have that if you've made it big in some of these, either in sports or in entertainment, that it would be very difficult to like avoid actually these parties and stuff like that, and kind of getting asked to do those things. And it sounds like you've been asked to go to some of them. I mean, how is it that you actually avoided those things? Because it just seems like it's such a black hole right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've always been well awake or like people like to say woke for like probably 15, 20 years. And I've always had a good sense about being around certain people. If I felt something weird around somebody, I'm like, no way, no thank you. But it's always been like when you go to these things, like athletes, and it seems like athletes, especially fighters, always hang out with actors and vice versa. Like athletes are trying to get into the movie. You know, everyone wants to kind of be like in the movie industry. The movie stars and celebrities like that like to hang out with athletes. They mix together quite regularly. And at that time when I was boxing, when I, especially during the years where I started losing a lot of my focus, when I was partying all the time, and I would go to the Playboy Mansion, or I'd go to like this guy's party or that, or gifting parties and meet certain people in Hollywood, and I was losing focus on my career. And to be a heavyweight boxer, you cannot lose even this much focus. And that's what happened to me. You know, I started drinking a lot, schmoozing, and doing things I shouldn't have done. And yeah, I got to meet a lot of people. But I lost track of who I was and everything that I stood for, because it's so fun. You know, it's a fun life. But I would get a feeling around certain people like, this dude's not right, man. There's something wrong with this guy. And you'd always hear things, and the whispers are loud. The whispers are loud out in Hollywood, man, inside those circles. And I just didn't divulge in it. I would just stay away from certain people when I started hearing certain things or certain rumors. I would just get away from them. I didn't want to be like, I would get to the line, but I wouldn't cross it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does. Like it sounds like, you know, you were partying and stuff like that, but it sounds like there was a side of you that was still really aware of kind of what was going on, and you had enough sense to kind of like sidestep a bunch of that. And you went through a gigantic transformative process too, right?
Big time. You know, when you're doing those things and you're out partying, it's so fun. It's so fun. You conveniently neglect the fact that you have a problem. And I had a major drinking problem. Drugs, drinking, women, the whole thing, man. And I was not a saint by any means. So it was when my career finally ended and that stamp was put on my career, like, it's over. David is done. He's been knocked out. He's not the 36-0 guy anymore. That's when I started realizing, like, that's when my life really changed. And I was like, holy shit, this is reality now. Like, I feel like I got thrown out in the cold naked and dark. It was dark, and I just didn't know who I was. I had no, like, in the middle of a black sea with no compass. I don't know how to explain it. It was just the most lonely period of time where it's just an identity crisis, the whole thing. Like, everything was happening at once to me. Darkest of dark times. And I'm sure maybe a lot of your listeners are going through that, but there's always hope. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to have faith. I always had that little nugget of faith that God was going to get me through this. And sure enough, he got me through it. I'm a firm believer in Christ. I give a lot of credit to Jim Caviezel, who he always called me, like, at the right time, man. Like, he would just call me and talk me through things, and he would help me pray the rosary. And you know, everyone knows about Jim Caviezel. He's been blackballed in Hollywood for playing the role of Jesus Christ. And that guy is such an amazing, first of all, person, and an even more amazing friend. and an unbelievable actor. And I'm privileged to even know the guy. And he always calls me in my darkest times and helps walk me through it. And I give him a lot of credit, man. That guy's been an amazing friend.
Yeah, on your he said a quote. And this is from Jim directly. For people who don't know, I mean, he played Jesus in the Passion of Christ. So he said, "I met Nino right after the Passion of Christ. What amazed me about him was his need to know whether I really believed in the man I played. He has a longing for God that guides his life in all aspects. Over time, I got to see the fighter he truly is, internally and otherwise." And like you mentioned, like he's now in this new film that's all about human trafficking, or specifically child trafficking and sex trafficking. I mean, it's just amazing. And so, I mean, and what do you think about all of this related with him? And you've had very, I guess, interdimensional experiences yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I went on I go on all kinds of different shows, like, Lauren Eisenhower, and I've been on this paranormal show and these or that. I've experienced a lot of paranormal activity. I'm a big believer in that. I'm a big believer in entities and the spiritual realm. I believe this battle that we are fighting is a spiritual one. And there are principalities and entities out there that we don't know about, that we're not able to see, but there are forces of energy out there that are dark and light. And I think we're caught in the middle in this three-dimensional realm. And that's exactly what we're fighting against. And you can either A, ignore it, or B, understand it and acknowledge it and pick a side. Because now it's too late. It's not a time now where we can just dilly-dally around and conveniently ignore things and, I don't know, it sounds good. No, it's real. And I think now at this point in humanity, where we're at now with the spiritual awakening, we need to pick a side, and we need to direct where humanity is going to go. And this is a massive spiritual awakening not on a country level, but on a global scale. And it's happening, and we're in it right now. And I think that with this quarantine and everyone being under this massive lockdown or whatever, I think now is the time where these light bulbs are just going on, turning on to every human being out there. And they're starting to pay more attention to like shows like this. Instead of Monday Night Football and, the Grammys or the Oscars or what movies on. I mean, people are now, like, for the first time ever, and such a massive scale, paying attention to what really matters. They're not eating the bread and circus like they would refer to in Roman days. Bread and circus, give them bread and circus. It is that way in the United States. That's the way they distract us. When I say they, the globalists, the people that run this world, that run our country, that have their talents and everything. Sports, entertainment, and all that, yes, a good distraction, but to be divulging it to the point where you cannot see anything else, and that's all you pay attention to, is wrong. Now people are paying attention to something much bigger and much greater. And this is the Great Awakening. This is why it's called the Great Awakening, because people are now paying attention.
Question: who created the New World Order? How did it actually come to be? What are some of the organizations involved? Well, ever heard of the Council on Foreign Relations? The Bilderberg Group? The Trilateral Commission? The Club of Rome? The Royal Institute of International Affairs? And of course, the United Nations. What do all these groups have in common anyway? Most of all, what are their true objectives? Prepare for a brand new series called The Roundtable, only on edgeofwonder.tv. Get access now.
That was awesome, everything you just said, first of all. But I wanted to kind of ask you what you thought about this, because you coming from where you came from, where you were actually experiencing those parties and how fun it is and how easy it is to just kind of forget, while that's actually going on in the Hollywood elites' lives, we're all at home watching all of that. And we're taught to wish to have that life, like to pursue that kind of life. And so as we're going through life, we're going through college, we're going through, high school and then college, and then all of these different life events where we're all trying to avoid responsibilities and just ball. And like rap and hip hop is all teaching us to do that. And all of those are actually set up by the cabal too, the deep state. It's like this crazy, weird dream we're in that is just against us and trying to become awake. And I mean, what do you think about that? Is that accurate?
Yeah, you know who I was privileged to meet also at a boxing fight in Ruidoso, New Mexico, when Austin Trout was fighting. I was commentating on the fights. I got to meet the real Rick Ross, Freeway Rick Ross, and his whole book. I forgot the name of the book, but I got to sit down and talk to him. And he talks about how the CIA controlled hip hop and how they put out there what they wanted to put out there. And I mean, the guy goes deep into it. So you got to understand who this MK Ultra and all this stuff is real deal stuff. Well, they talk about it on Out of Shadows. So this is real mind control, man. This is mind control. And celebrity worship is just part of it, because celebrity worship allows you to be like what, I mean, look at every girl on Instagram or every guy on Instagram. Everyone wants to be instant famous or like have this celebrity appeal. And I mean, it's to the point now that it's just such a narcissistic society that it's especially the millennials and younger than them, that they've adopted this narcissistic belief system that they cannot, I don't know if they can ever break away from it. Hopefully this quarantine helps them, but that's where we're at now as a society, and that's what we're dealing with. You know, like we were talking earlier, like you're a 90s guy, I'm a 90s guy. We had that point of reference to where we knew before the internet what life was like. We knew what it was like to go outside and hang out with your friends and play and just come home when the lights go out, you know, right when the lights turn off at the parks or whatever, you come home. Kids don't understand that anymore. There's none of that. We had that point of reference. So there's that. The internet brought us the information age at warp speed. Information was coming at us 1,000,000 miles an hour. But we knew pre-internet and post-internet. And that was a huge jump in human consciousness. Now, with that being said, now we're at another turning point in human consciousness, and that is the quarantine time. Right now is another turning point in human consciousness where focus is going elsewhere into things that really matter. And I believe this spiritual awakening is amazing, dude. We're living in such amazing times right now that we're all actually paying attention to things that really matter. Like, hey, there's forces and people out there that are controlling us, and everything we watch on TV, everything we listen to on the radio, all the sports we watch. Who are these people? Let's take a look at this. And people are actually doing their own research. It's amazing. An amazing time to be alive. I know I go on all these different tangents, but I get started.
No. This is
all.
Great, you know? I mean, this is like what we do on Edge of Wonder. I mean, we can go from talking about one thing and then, you know, go from politics, talk about UFOs or whatever, you know?
I didn't know if like someone's in the background going like, cut him off.
No,
Like, this guy's lost it.
No. You know, I mean, yeah, seriously, we talk about everything. I mean, Rob and I have had our own experiences through everything, you know, I mean, other dimensional stuff to spiritual things to everything else, which is why I was just so moved by your interview with Laura. I mean, I was actually crying during a lot of parts of it, just because,
thank you.
You know, especially you talking about your own spiritual journey through this and experiencing more of the divine aspect of, you know, your kind of, well, I'm saying awakening of more of like, you know, going from being this boxer to now like having this new mission of who you are, you know, and it explains a lot on why you're here, why we're all here doing what we're doing. And it was just so inspiring and just so moving. I just,
if there's some advice I can give people too, that helped me, and this really did help me. When you're going through really turbulent times and like, I mean, the waves are just crashing in your chest and you have anxiety and you have depression and maybe you're thinking of suicide, ending your life, which believe me, I thought about all of that. All of that hit me when I retired from boxing and I was humiliated and knocked out on TV. My face was changed permanently from being knifed in the throat, overdosing on drugs. I mean, everything, right? Everything hit me. I went back to basics. And that's what saved my life, is that I started a foundation called K.O. Bullying, and I started going and I started giving back to make myself feel better, and like a therapy. I started speaking to kids about being bullied in school, especially in my hometown of El Paso. I started going to like high schools, junior highs, elementary schools with my friend Michael Blanco, and we created K.O. Bullying, and it's a organization where we speak to kids about being bullied, and I give my own testimony. How I used to eat my lunch in the bathroom stall in the gymnasium because I was so scared I was gonna go get my ass kicked outside by all the cholos and chilangos that wanted to beat me up, you know. So I was constantly living in fear going to school because so many kids wanted to beat me up, man. I don't know if I just had that face or what it was, but everyone wanted to kick my ass, and that's what turned me into a fighter. But you know, and a vicious fighter at that is I had all that pent up anger and like not feeling worthy and the insecurities and all the things that I dealt with as a kid came out in the ring. So that's why I went out there and knocked guys out so fast. I was so pissed off at the world. And I talk about that to schools and to children. So if there's any advice I can give anybody, it is maybe if you're feeling really down and you feel like ending your life or you're depressed, go help somebody. Go to the local homeless mission or you know, House of Hope or whatever it is. There's homeless places all over the place, and serve them food. Give them stuff. Give them blankets. Talk to them, man. Those are real people. You go talk to some homeless people that have it really rough, you're going to realize how good you have it. There's tent cities now all over the place. Yeah, I understand there's some homeless people that are crazy, they're batshit crazy, and they're off their psycho drugs or whatever, but there are some good ones there. There's some good people there that just have fallen on hard times. And when you go speak to these people, those are the salt of the earth people you really need to get to know. Because it can happen to anybody. Especially now with people losing their jobs, anybody can be homeless. You could be homeless, I could be homeless, anybody can be homeless. You just hit the right buttons and any one of us can be down and out on our asses and being stepped over by other people and ignored. This is a reality.
Man, thank you for saying that. I actually, when I was in my very early 20s, I went through like some serious depression, and the only thing that got me through it was actually exactly what you just said. It was shifting my thoughts from thinking about myself and the situation I was in to trying to help other people, to putting my focus on being a more selfless person. And eventually I was able to overcome all of those things. I really haven't had depression since then. It's just, it changed my life. Right. And,
Absolutely.
I you know, in your Laura Eisenhower interview, you did talk about depression a little bit. And I wanted to know, like, you know, is there more, to that? Like, how did you overcome all of it? Was it purely your wish to just help other people?
Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to when I was a teenager. I was always one of my best friends. His name is Dr. Roche, Marcelo Roche. He has like 5 last names. Dr. Marcelo Rodriguez, Chavez, whatever. So he's a good friend of mine, and I started seeing him when I was about 12. And you know, they put me on Zoloft, Prozac, Anafranil, Wellbutrin, Lexapro. I mean, dude, I was like the guinea pig of medicine, and maybe it saved my life. Maybe I needed the medicine at that time, but as I got older, boxing became my medicine. Boxing became my outlet. So it's important for people to have an outlet. But I started, you know, after boxing, what did I have? I had nothing. I wasn't going to take medicine anymore, and I had no outlet. So I had to dig deep within myself and really extend myself to helping people. And that's what I did. And that honestly, look, depression never goes away. You battle it. I still get depressed. I was depressed this morning. You know, it gets depressing just being in quarantine. I mean, I know we're all suffering from it, but you find ways to battle it. You know, you find ways to dig down deep and say, okay, what can I do to pull myself out of this? It's a struggle to get out of bed sometimes. You know, you just want to lay in bed. It's depressing. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. We're all in quarantine. We're in lockdown. It's easy to get depressed right now, but you have to pull yourself out of it. You got to help other people. Go down, like I said, go to the local homeless shelter. Go talk to somebody, man. Don't be afraid. Wear your mask. Go talk to somebody. Keep 5 feet the distance, whatever it is you have to do, but talk to somebody. Get out. Explore yourself as a human being. And that's what I made myself do. I made myself get my ass out of the bed, and I made myself go down and help people, especially during holidays like Thanksgiving and stuff like that. Go serve them food. Help people, man. Get out there and be active. Be proactive. you can get over the depression. You just have to make yourself be active. You have to make yourself make that initial step to for your own progress, your own health, mental health, to help other people, and that in return you help yourself. That's what Jesus preached about, right? When you give, you're receiving actually, because it's this gratification that you get that is so rewarding that you don't get by being self-serving. You get it by helping others.
Soul food.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a firm believer in that. And I tell everybody all the time, I'm not up here preaching. I hardly ever go to church. You know, I'm not that guy. I'm a complete screw up. But I know how to pull myself out of some of the worst depression and anxiety. And if I can help someone, dude, if I could help anybody just to get out of that slump, it's not worth taking your life. It's not worth, you know, a breakup is not worth it. Losing your job isn't worth it. This too shall pass. That's my favorite verse in the Bible. This too shall pass. Things pass. Tough times don't last. Tough people do.
Yeah,
Amen.
you know, it's really interesting because during, especially Laura's interview, you know, you kept saying that, you know, that you're not perfect and everything else. And, you know, but it's kind of interesting because I really see how, you know, God, I believe God, when God chooses us to do something, it's not because, it's because we have a heart to do something. It has nothing to do with what we've done or anything else. And something that really hit me hard is something you said, is that, you know, even these really evil people who are doing bad things still have a chance if they're willing to truly repent and tell, you know, say what they're doing to the world. And, you know, I believe that forgiveness will come to them if they are truly wanting that heart to make things right. And I think that when someone has that heart, doesn't matter who they are, this attracts all of the righteous beings to be around you and say, hey, you have this heart now, we can help you. And you know, seeing your process from what you went through, you know, it's so challenging, but I think all of us have experienced this at some point in time in our lives. You know, not the physical aspect of like from Rob and I, but the emotional aspect, the depression and all of this. And then all of a sudden, you know, when you have this, like, I really want to help people, I want to do something that can make a difference. It's just like this path becomes wide open for you. And I think that's I mean, from my understanding, this is exactly what happened to you.
Yeah, and that reminds me when I had it was an ex-girlfriend, and we used to fight all the time. It was a real toxic relationship. And she just told me one time, and it hit home with me. She goes, you know, Dave, she goes, you're always trying to hurt me with the words you say, this and that. And I was like, yeah, I was pissed, you know? And she was like, but you know, you got to realize that hurt people hurt people. And I was like, ooh, I had no comeback from that. And I was just, I thought about it. I remember I went and sat down. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm hurting inside. And that's why I'm always trying to like say something to affect her or piss her off or whatever, because I was hurting inside so immensely. And that's really, when you think about these people, that I do believe some of them are psychopaths. Like, they have no conscience. They're just void of a soul. And if that's the case, then what can you do to help those people? But I do feel like a lot of them, I'm hoping majority, have a soul, and they're just hurt, and they're hurting other people to fill that void. And I guess, really, I can't believe I'm saying this. I really cannot believe I'm saying this. 5 years ago, I would have never said this. 2 years ago, I would have never said this. But maybe it's time we pray for people like that. And wouldn't it be the greatest thing in the world if they could come back and say, I'm a changed person, I believe in God, and please forgive me for my sins. If I have to go serve time in jail, or if I have to go do this or I have to do that to pay for the sins against humanity, I'll do it. But please, you know, could you just imagine that? I mean, how amazing that would be if God worked in that way, which God can. And that's why I say someone like Hillary Clinton or all these people that are just, we consider filth, or like, imagine if they just came to God. I mean, it would just be the most amazing thing to see that happen. You know, it'd be just so amazing. And that would be true victory. That would be the true victory.
Man, I totally agree. Like, it would actually change everything, because those people coming forward and kind of telling everything that they've done and why they regret it, and then just it would actually encourage more people to be doing that in their lives, and it would actually fundamentally just change the entire world. And it's a gigantic
Consciousness would change
opportunity.
immediately. Yeah, consciousness would just be boom. We would just shoot up so many vibrational levels as a species, and it would just change everything. It would be a new paradigm. And I mean, but it just seems to me it's and that's why I like to, you know, when I talk to you guys, I think you guys are very open-minded, and you guys are a great channel. It's just that for me to express like this, it would be, you know, first of all, people come into your station to listen to you guys. They have to, it's like you throw little seeds here and there for the expansion of the intellect, of the consciousness. And the important thing is not to be negative, right? Like we can't harp on we can't lower our vibrational level to a dense level to where people are like, yeah, screw those people, screw that. You know, it's like this, it's like, we're right, you're wrong. Not like that. It's got to be like an expansion. You know, we got to do things the right way and have people tap into something that's greater than ourselves, right? Like, and so that's why this message is so important that I'm getting across, and what you guys are doing is it's important to let people know, like, hey man, we're all in this together. We're only as strong as our weakest link, and our weakest link are very sick people. So we have to help them in some way, shape, or form to lift up all of humanity, because we're only as strong as our weakest link. So if there's people suffering that are at that low vibrational level, we can't just ignore them. We do really have to pray for those people and hope that they can come to terms with that and ask repentance and move forward. Does that make sense? So we need to be able to lift everybody up, because we're only as strong as our weakest link as a species.
Yeah. Oh my God. It makes so much sense. And, you know, one of my friends, he passed away of cancer a couple years ago, one of my best friends. And after he passed, he came to me, and I'll never forget these words he told me. He said, don't worry about the people who are in the light. Focus on the people who are still lost in darkness. And it just hit me so hard, because I realized, you know, this is why we're here. We're not here because for the people who are in the light. We're here to help the people who are still lost in that darkness, because things haven't ended yet. There's still a chance for them to change, I believe.
Exactly. And I was in the darkness, you know, I was in the blackest of black, man. Like I said, my analogy I used was being lost at sea, pitch black with no compass and no paddle, just in still water. That's how I felt. Like it was the most void of God, void of everything, like no friends, no relationships. It was the most miserable. I mean, miserably, if I even suffered from misery, it would have been a feeling. I had no feeling. It was like I was dead. And it was like the worst feeling in the world. Like that feeling of darkness and void of everything was the worst feeling, you know? And if I can come out of that and go through all the changes and transition, then I swear to you, anybody can. They just have to be strong enough and just have a little nugget of faith to do so, because it's everybody, man. Everybody is able to change and make these improvements in their life and help other people. And we can't neglect. No matter how bad you're feeling. Listen, and this is another thing too. No matter how bad I was feeling, I always tried to help someone else, because I knew that would ultimately help me be a better person, and I could come out of that darkness. Because no matter how crappy you're feeling, no matter what you've done, no matter what sins you commit, you can still help another person. No matter what your sins are, no matter how bad you've treated other people, have done it, you can still make up for it. Every day, you can still just make that switch and make up for it. It's important. That's an important rule of thumb right there. You've got to know that no matter how bad you feel about yourself, how unworthy you feel, you can always make that change. And I really believe that.
You know, David, we were just kind of talking about these kind of crappy hands we've been given in life. You know, I mean, it's not, I really think all of us have been dealt something that has been really difficult to deal with, that are our own kind of tribulations that we have to overcome. And I think what I kind of wanted to say and to bring up is that actually no one has been dealt a worse hand than those people who are doing the evilest things right now, because they actually in their minds think that they're going to get away with these things, that karma is not going to catch up to them somehow.
Right.
And that somehow they're just going to use whatever methods that they can to skirt the, God's judgment on those things. I don't know how else to say it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And really, it's like those are in my opinion, that's the saddest situation is you have these people like that. But also at the same time, it's like we've all been dealt something different, and all of us have to find our way around it. And for those people out there, if they're watching the show right now, like, this is your opportunity. Like, when are you going to have another opportunity in the millennia or whatever it is that is your soul's life to actually come forward and actually make a positive change? I don't know how else to say it. Yeah.
And it could be at any time, man. No matter what you did, you could have just robbed somebody and, beat someone over the head. You could always make a change no matter what you did, man. It's never too late to repent as long as you're alive. Listen, when I was growing up and I was a teenager, I hung out with a really rough crowd of people, like I was raised in El Paso. We bordered Juarez. I did my thug stuff and stuff I feel terribly guilty about, but I learned to forgive myself, and I learned to turn my life around and help other people, dude. It's really that simple. It's a light switch that you just turn on and you just say, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. It's the same way I quit drinking alcohol. The way I quit drinking alcohol, it's a funny story. I was in a bar and I was drinking, and I was staring into the mirror. The bar had a mirror. And I was looking at myself, and I was probably like 30 pounds heavier than I am right now, bloated, feeling disgusted with myself, just a slob. And I'm like looking at myself and I'm going, man, I'm 42. And I'm like, all of a sudden I got this epiphany of me at like 45 at the bar. And hearing the people in the background talk and saying, "Yeah, there's that washed up boxer, look what he did with his life. He did nothing. He could have been somebody." I feel already like, hey, I didn't make it to the heavyweight championship of the world. I already failed at that. I don't want to fail in life. So at that moment, man, I stared at myself in the mirror and I was like, that's it. I'm done. I didn't even tell my friends bye. I just said, hey, I'm going to go to the restroom real quick. I put the beer down. I walked out the back door and I never looked back. And that was it. And I won't go back to it. The only regret I have is not quitting earlier. And listen, I understand some people like to have a glass of wine with dinner and moderate drinks. I understand that. I wasn't like that. I was all in. Let's go all the way. How many shots do you want? How many shots do you want? I'm buying. Let's take 10. Why not? I was crazy. So I had to leave that life, and I'm so happy I did. And you have to make adjustments in your life. So I had to leave alcohol. Maybe someone out there needs to leave cocaine. Maybe they need to leave smoking weed every day. I don't know, man. Everyone has their vices. But for me to be clear-minded and to be able to do these interviews with you and speak what I spoke on my patio having coffee that day where that video went viral, I needed to be of sound mind and sound heart. And that's what I did. And the first step was dropping alcohol.
It all started 1 century ago when an ambitious dictator began searching for certain artifacts. But these relics were no ordinary objects. Oh no, it was believed that whoever had possession of these artifacts would gain immense power and even control the fate of the world. Thus, 3 secret societies were formed, one of which was Nazi Ahnenerbe. The Ahnenerbe was a paranormal research group that sent expeditions all over the world to recover these legendary relics of great power. Were they successful? And why were these artifacts so heavily sought after? Are there other relics in history that have powers bequeathed to those that possess them? And what happens when one wields such power in their hands? The Spear of Destiny, the Holy Grail, the Crown of Thorns, the Ark of the Covenants, the Altarpiece of Ghent, and Solomon's Ring of Power, just to name a few. Join us as we uncover the history of these ancient artifacts on Edge of Wonder's brand new mini-series filled with intrigue, bewilderment, and suspense. Relics of Power, History's Supernormal Artifacts, only on edgeofwonder.tv.
I actually know somebody who was a pretty high-level member of the triad gangs in China. This person did some really horrible stuff, and now he makes YouTube videos exposing the Chinese party and all like the bad things that are going on, and he's really dedicating his life to. But I only knew him as he is now, and I would have never guessed in a million years that he was like a high-level member in the triads. He's just so humble, so compassionate, and just an incredible person to be around. And you know, he told me the same thing. He's like, if I can change, he's like, anybody can do this, you know? And he's like, it's just, you have to forgive yourself and you have to ask for forgiveness, you know?
You know, a friend told me, he said, you haven't hit, you know, everybody hits rock bottom, but it's until you find out that rock bottom has a basement. So, you know, you got to remember, like, you know, we all have our, you know, we all hit, some hit a lot lower than others, man. And we're all at that point. We all hit that point. It's just how much further down can you go, really, you know? So.
You know, actually, I wanted to say, you know, you were describing yourself looking in the mirror. You were, you know, 30 pounds heavier or whatever. And I was like, man, that sounds like quarantine right there. That's just you looking at yourself in quarantine. Everybody's just stuffing their face and not exercising. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, dude. I mean, and I'm in my backyard doing workouts, like prison yard workouts. You know what I mean? They're so boring, like push-ups, sit-ups. Like I want to go hit the steel. I want to go hit the bench press. I want to go stuff like that.
Tell me about it. Boring. I started putting weights in my backpack, and I'm using my backpack to do like curls and stuff, man.
Yes, dude. It's so crazy, man. It's like I cannot believe we've come to this, right? And it's like you got to get inventive, you know. And we don't have heavy weights in the garage, so I'm literally like I'm doing push-ups. Let me see, I'm doing sit-ups. I'm doing squats, like 40, 50 at a time, taking a break, doing 40, 50 at a time more than I go for a little run, come back, and I'm like, gosh, this is getting really monotonous. Like, I need to put on some pounds, like weightlift and stuff like that. But hey, dude, I mean, honestly, I'm getting better at my push-ups. I didn't know how weak I really was when I came to push-ups until I could only knock out 30 of them, or like 35. And then I started doing it more and more. I'm like, now I'm up to like 60. But dude, I could only do like 35. I couldn't believe I was that weak. I was strong on the bench press, but when it came to like push-ups, I was weak. And I didn't know. I was like, wow. So I guess I'm going to improve on this right now.
Yeah. No, yeah. You find a lot of weird stuff when you have to start innovating, especially when it comes to gym stuff. I found the same thing.
Yeah, and honestly, like I'm going to not go to the gym as much. I'm going to start doing a lot more home workouts, but I'll probably hit the gym with the free weights and stuff like that, maybe 2 to 3 times a week. But the push-ups and sit-ups, since I found out I was so weak on them, I'm going to keep doing those every day now at home, you know? So at least there's some positive silver lining things that are coming out of this quarantine for sure.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. So I actually had this really eye-opening experience when I decided to run a couple of these Tough Mudders a couple years back. Yeah. You've ever heard of those? Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah. They're like 12-mile obstacle course. They were developed by like the British Special Ops or whatever. You get like electrocuted and stuff. It's a great time.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I just have no desire, like after boxing, I have no desire to compete anymore, dude. Right. I am done with that riffraff, dude. I'm like, people, like I have friends hitting me up saying, hey man, let's go run the sand dunes or let's go do this. I'm like, go right ahead, go have fun. I competed. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not into that shit no more. I just want to chill. I do nice little like workouts here and there that are enjoyable. I'm not into pushing my body to the extreme anymore. That's over.
Yeah. And I found that when I was like training for that whole thing, I was doing, most of it is like, you know, high intensity stuff, and you're out doing the stuff you learned in like grade school. And by the time you're done with it, seriously, I was in like the best shape of my life. And I was like, man, who knew that just by like doing like grade school stuff, you could get in good shape, you know, just the push-ups and all that. Dude.
my sister had me doing yoga with her, and I didn't really know how out of shape I was until I started doing yoga with her. I was like, holy shit, this is hard. You know, like I'm not flexible. And ever since I had I had back surgery, and anything that I do, dude, I pay for it for about 2 or 3 days. Like I go for a jog, and I'm talking just a jog. I come home, and the next day when I wake up, I am just, I can't move. I mean, it's painful. And my sister's like, well, you are 42. I'm like, well, yeah, but I also had back surgery. You know, I mean, I've been hit by like a train. I was hit by the hardest hitting heavyweights my whole life. I mean, I look back and I think about that, and I'm like, who was that guy? Like, I don't even know what possessed me to do that. Like, I couldn't box today. Like, you have to have a certain mindset. Like, my mindset's changed so much. Like, people ask me all the time, could you go back to boxing? I couldn't, because I'm not that guy anymore. I don't even know who that guy was. I went through such a transformation, and I changed so much that, yeah, if I had to protect myself, I would, but I can't go in there and just fight anymore. I did a lot of soul searching. I've been asked by Impact and some people to go back and fight, and I can't do it.
Well, you're fighting a different battle now. So
yeah, this one's a lot more important. This is not about me.
Amen to that.
Definitely. You know,
seriously, it's not about me.
Something kind of getting back. I mean, I guess this is going to be kind of a darker question, but then we'll kind of end it with some very positive stuff. But, you know, coming back to, again, with these elite people doing all these like really dark things, what is it do you think is, why are they so like think this is right? Why is it that they're so attracted to this is like, you know, because obviously for anyone who's really thinking about this, like, yeah, isn't the light always like where you want to be? You know, why would you want to go in the darkness? Even though they think that, I don't know. They think that.
I'll tell you exactly why. It's about power, and it's about self-serving. So when you get into that realm of power and everyone is looking up to you, and it's kind of like when I was done fighting, right? Like, it's an addictive stimulation. So when you get done, when I was done with a fight or whatever, and I'd get off the ring, hundreds of people would come and I'd sign autographs, and it's this false sense of importance. Like, you're like this, you feel like a god, and you're signing autographs. You think you're that. It's an addictive drug, and people will do anything to hold on to that. I fell from grace. I had no choice to let go. I had to let go. I don't know what kind of person I would have been if I would have stayed with it. So the fact that I fell from grace and got knocked off that white horse, and I was humiliated and humbled, I'd obviously transformed me into a different person. Now, if I would have stayed, right, then maybe I'd be just like one of those sickos. I don't know. We don't really know. I mean, it's the fact that I fell from grace that changed me. It took a hard lesson for me to change. That's a very addictive life, to having power. You don't ever want to let it go. Having power is addictive. It's everything to you when you have it. So when you if you ever can put yourself in those people's shoes, and we can sit here and point fingers and say, oh, you're evil, you're this and that. What they have is a very addictive drug. And it's harder to break than heroin or anything. This stuff is addictive. Glory and power is very addictive. So that, you got to think about that and what these people are dealing with. It's something other people don't get to experience ever in their life, you know? Does that make sense?
True. Yeah, no, it does. And I mean, also, we know, I mean, from just doing this, we know that there's a lot of exterior things too. Like, you have negative, you know, you guess you could say the reptilians, like negative ETs, demonic forces, and everything else that they really seem to want to bring this in because it gives them even more power and everything else over it.
Yeah, exactly. And if we want to touch on that, true, I do believe in those entities. I think they're out there. I you know, have I ever seen a reptilian? No, but it makes sense to me that they exist. It makes complete sense to me. You know, you look back at these ceremonies and rituals thousands of years ago. Who do you think they were sacrificing people to? They were saying the gods. But if you simplify the gods, what were the gods? They were entities they were worshiping, and it easily could have been reptilians. I mean, who's to say that they don't exist? To me, it makes complete logical sense that they exist, you know? And they have these elaborate, you know, tunneling systems and bases below our feet, and it would make sense, you know, and That's where we derive our terms of angels and demons. You know, hell below us, heaven, you know, the lighter beings ahead of above us, and the more dense evil beings below us, right? I mean, there's an explanation for all of this. I just don't know. I can't sit there and tell somebody like, yeah, I've hung out with some reptilians and they wanted to drink blood, and it's not like that. It just takes a lot of research, and kind of like, to me, it's common sense that these entities definitely would be hiding in plain sight and exist and control our reality. And if you were a being that could had control over a, let's say, a herd or like a food source, or like how they use humans, well, you would not want to be seen. It's easier to control when you're not seen, you know? And so that's a deep and dark subject that we can dive into, but it's like, it's really, it's disturbing to know that the rabbit hole goes that far down. Because once you open up Pandora's box, you know, and like once you stare into the abyss stares back at you. You know, that's my favorite line, because there's no answer for it. You just keep twisting and turning down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. No, and I think, you know, just to flip this on a positive note, I like you said, I do believe that there are angels and other extra dimensional beings working with people who want to do good, you know, and this is like the battle that's really playing out. So I believe it works both ways, and when your heart aligns with the righteous side, those righteous beings will come to you and guide you through that, you know. So
I agree with
Rob,
that.
do you want to add on to anything, Rob?
No, I agree. I was just going to tack on to what David said, that, you know, these beings are hiding in plain sight. I mean, look at the Queen. I'm just kidding, but it's, you know, if you look at old photos of their family in like the 1920s, it's legit, like, or the 30s or even 40s, like they look like the Addams family. It's like that.
Yeah.
It came like that show came from somewhere. And when you start looking at some of these old elite, it's hard to believe they're not satanic when you're looking at some of these photos of them, you know, and who knows what these people are worshiping. Like that dude, Aleister Crowley, and the things that he was trying to get into contact with. And I mean, this stuff gets really messed up and dark. And I agree with you. Like, I think it's much more naive to be an atheist than it is to actually believe that these things could exist. Because if you don't take into consideration that these things could exist, then you can just be taken advantage of any time. I mean, think about it. You know?
And that's another thing that, and I understand I keep going back to the alcohol thing, but I believe that when I was drinking alcohol, I was opening up a portal to these entities that like could take me over for a joyride. And it was like, I had no inhibitions. I was anything goes, man. I was like, you know, my worst self during those times. But I do believe that. I believe they're parasitic in the sense that they can latch onto people and leech off people. And if you have any kind of vices, they thrive off that shit. You know what I mean? So you got to remember that just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Like, look at electricity. Look when you turn on a fan. Look when you turn on a light. Electricity is there. We live in an electric universe where all of this, there's different kind of energies and intelligent energies. So they're all around us. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean anything. We can only see certain shades of the spectrum anyway with our eyesight. So to me, these things absolutely exist. They absolutely exist.
Well, and I think what people forget is that, you know, if the dark exists, if those things exist, then way more of the light exists, because that is actually what's guiding and controlling everything. And there, you know, there's so many stories about people seeing these light beings and they're watching from afar, I think. And you know,
like there has to be, if there's darkness, there has to have an exact polar opposite, right? So light needs dark, dark needs light. You cannot have light without dark. They need each other. It's yin and yang. So, I mean, then that goes into the discussion of like, okay, what's really right and wrong? It all comes down to perception. But I think as human beings, we are light beings. And I think it's like, there's an old Indian proverb that says, internally, we always have two wolves fighting, the white wolf and the black wolf, the bad and the good. And which one wins? It's the one that you feed the most. So that goes back to it's a choice. That's what free will comes down to. And that's what I've been battling with. Like, it's really a conscious choice to think, okay, am I going to go this way or this way? No, if I go this way, I know what can happen. I know where that leads me. I'm going to go this way. I'm going to feed the white wolf. Now, a lot of people feed the dark wolf, and those come in forms of vices like alcohol and drugs and things like that. That's what I was doing. That led to more bad decisions on my part. I got two DUIs. I mean, I was constantly getting thrown in the slammer. I'd knock somebody out in the bar and laugh about it. I mean, I was a really shitty person. And that, I didn't want to be that guy anymore. And I knew that my vices were controlling me, so I cut them off. And in order to be the best David that I can be, hey, listen, I had to feed the white wolf. I had to feed the good wolf. Now, I'm not making this racial. I'm not making this racial. I'm just saying, you get what I'm saying.
It's cool, man. People who watch our show are smart enough to know that you're not making a racist comment.
Yeah. I'm going to get attacked now.
Well, in going off that, the darkness is always going to try. It wants to be on you. It wants to drag you down. It's going to reach out to you, whereas the light, we have to choose to reach out to the light. It's like the light's always there. We just have to choose to search for it, to find it, and to follow that path. And like you said, I think it comes down to choice.
Well, you got to also remember this, like there is a beauty in darkness. There's a transformation that happens in darkness. Like the darkness that I went through in my life, it led to the light. So sometimes darkness is necessary. Plants need darkness as much as they need sun. So it's all, they have to coexist. But what I'm talking about is bettering yourself and making firm and good choices to where you feed yourself and you grow as a human being in a better sense, in the sense that you're walking more towards the light. We're all going to fall from grace. We're all going to screw up. I do all the time. And it's a matter of acknowledging that and learning from that. And so you can go towards the light more. It's like, because I really believe we were put here as light beings. I really believe that. I believe, and that's what that spiritual battle is all about, trying to pull us into the dark. And I believe that we're here from God, and we are light beings, and we're here to help others. And that's why it's important to help others who are in the dark.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, David, thank you so much for taking time out of your day, out of your week to be with us here on Edge of Wonder. And I think I speak for everyone at home watching right now when I say thank you. We don't want to take up too much of your time. So Ben, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add.
No. I mean, just really any last words that you have and where people can find you. I mean, just real quick, based on what you're saying. I mean, I think Rob and I both really cherish the dark path. I went through a dark path when I was younger, and it helped me understand what that darkness is. So then it helps me embrace the light even more, and I think going through that is really it was an important part of my own journey, of my own awakening process.
Right. It helps define you as a person. And how are you going to help other people if you haven't experienced what they're experiencing? Like, how can you go and talk to a depressed person and be like, oh, I know what it's like? If you don't know what it's like, you got to be in that place. You got to know what it's like to be in the trenches in order to get to that peak on the mountaintop. When I was training in boxing, my trainer would always say, you got to train in the trenches. That's how you get to the mountaintop. You got to train and be comfortable in the shit. You got to be in it, and you got to understand that that's your comfort zone. So that way, when you're on the peak, you understand how you enjoy it that much more, because you know what it's like. You spent all your time in the trenches climbing up that mountain to get there. Basically, no, people can just find me at, my Twitter is Nino Boxer, Nino Boxer. And my YouTube is David Nino Rodriguez. And then Instagram is David Nino Rodriguez Official. David Nino Rodriguez, it's so long. David Nino Rodriguez Official.
So, David, how do they find your book?
It's When the Lights Go Out, and that's on Amazon. They can order that. It's they can do Kindle or paperback, but yeah, Amazon, and it's When the Lights Go Out.
We'll put all the links in the description below of the video, so
okay.
Everyone will be able to find it and everything. But is there I want to give you a chance to have any last words you want to say to everybody? I mean, a message of any kind of hope through this time, or anything that you want to comment on, like the Great Awakening?
Enjoy it. This is the spiritual awakening. Find the silver lining. Everything that's happened to me right now with this new direction I'm going is a complete accident. Or is it? I don't know. But I mean, for me it is. Like, I didn't expect this 2 weeks ago. I would have never expected this. I was simply having some coffee on my back porch, and look what happened. So anything can happen to anybody if your intention is good, you know? And I feel like we're living in a monumental time and a historic time, and it's the realm of all possibilities. So grab the bull by the horns and go after what you deserve, and go for it, man. And look what's happening to me right now. This is insanity. I'm on the edge of wonder. So it's been great, man. I appreciate you guys having me on.
No, thank you so much,
David. You're welcome on our show anytime you want to be, man. I know these are dark subjects, but you're such a positive person and such an inspiration. And if you ever need a place to to talk, you're welcome to come on. I just want you to know that.
Dude, I so appreciate it.
Yeah, we don't even have to get into the dark stuff. You just want to come on and say, hey guys, I just want to talk about some really positive things right now. It's like, great, we don't have to talk about the dark.
That is the direction I want to go now with, Laura Eisenhower and myself are going to do a show together. She wants to do a bi-weekly show. And I said, yeah. I said, Laura, that's an honor for me, because I believe she's highly spiritual. She's a light worker, and I feel comfortable talking to her. And I feel like we're gonna touch on some good subjects. And I told her, we got to go in a positive route, Laura, because this dark shit has got to stop. Like we could talk about being in the dark at some point in our lives, but let's go positive. Let's try to bring people into the light and have a positive show. So yeah, myself and Laura are gonna be doing a show every other week. That's what it is, every other week.
That's awesome news.
Yeah. So we decided to do that. It's gonna be fun.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Well, David, thank you again for being on our show. And Ben, did you have any final words?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, until next time, we'll see you out
on the edge.
I've actually never heard of this show till about a few days ago, and I started looking into it. Like, this is a pretty big show. This is cool.
Yeah.
When we saw you on Laura, we were like, oh shit. Man, Dave Matthews Band came on TV right before this, and so stuck in my head now. Yeah, that was the golden age of video music,
Yeah. And that was it, dude. After that, 9/11 happened, and then mass hysteria, mass paranoia.
Oh, it's true.
I mean, it's fucking, the world went down the fucking drain.
We'll make sure that's in the bloopers.
I think someone just rang the doorbell. Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right. Yeah. This is going to be edited, right?
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Sorry about
we
that.
can edit that. No worries.